Hello again and welcome to the Veterans Forum. Today we have a real good story to share with you. It's my pleasure and privilege to introduce our guest today. His name is vonAllmen. Would you introduce yourself please and spell your last name and give us your service dates?
My name was Robert vonAllmen. I was in the service, I was in the Navy from 1947 or 48 to 1967. I made a career of it.
Good career, I understand. Huh? And where do you live now?
Now I live in Richmond.
Okay, very good. Now, so that we can kind of, if you will, set a history, can we go back as to when and where were you born and how was life before you got into the service, when you were with your kids, family, school?
I was born and raised in New Haven, Connecticut. I had an older brother, 3 years older than me, and my sister was 8 years younger than I was. I was born in 1931, April 8th, 1931, and lived in New Haven for 17 years. I got up to where I enlisted in the Navy from New Haven. So that included World War II. The Depression and World War II. Okay,
the Depression we both can talk about, but
yeah.
how was it in your memory, if you will, living up not knowing that you didn't have everything?
We had anything we wanted, really. Okay. My father worked 2 jobs. He was a policeman, and he worked at the high school downtown. And we never wanted for anything. We had food. In fact, we helped people out in the neighborhood with food because some of them were...
Good deal for those who didn't have. Right?
Didn't have it,
okay, fine. Now, for the record, I forgot to introduce ourselves. Today is the 18th of March, 2008, and this program is coming to you from the studios of Pittsfield Community Television here in Frederica Drive in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. I think we're very lucky. You've just met Bob, if you will, quickly, but where and when did you join the Navy? Where did you enlist in boot camp and that kind of stuff?
I went down to ask the recruiter if I could join the Navy. I think that was about 5 days before I was 17. And he said, you have to bring your father down because you're not 18 years old. So my father came down with me after my 17th birthday. And I enlisted right there. And they sent me to New York, to 90 Church Street in New York, where they took all the recruiters, or all the recruited people from New England and New York. And we had a physical there, and then they shipped us off to Great Lakes, Illinois, and put our civilian clothes in a cardboard box out there, shipped it back, and gave us uniforms, and I was in.
All right. Now, and like most guys, did you have anything special that stood out when you, quote, left civilian life and became a Navy man, as far as how you felt when you were inducted? Anything special or anything disappointing, or just how was your introduction?
It was just about what I expected. You know, they were pretty tough in boot camp, but that's what I expected. And I didn't have any problems there. It was, what, 3 months? It was 12 weeks, I think. And then we took some tests to see what kind of school they would send us to. And they told me I could apply for radio, radar, or sonar school. And I took sonar school. I'd never been to Key West, Florida.
A geography lesson, huh?
Yeah. So I got on a train after boot leave. I had, what, 10 days leave. Yeah. And came back to Great Lakes, and they told me I was going to sonar school, and put me on a train, and with some, I think there was 5 or 6 other fellows. And we got a sleeper train, then it went Illinois Central, went down to Miami on the train, and then took a Greyhound bus down from there down to Key West. And sonar school was 6 months long. So spent the next 6 months chasing submarines, and they had submarines and destroyers down there, and the students would ride the ships and
get on-the-job training.
On-the-job training. It was very interesting, very interesting. I mean, I wasn't disappointed at all with it. So.
Now, is that Key West, isn't that where they had the UDT schools way back when too, or weren't you in that end of the island?
I don't think that was there when I was there. They did have a helicopter base there, and the Boca Chica Naval Air Station is probably 7 or 8 miles away.
Okay.
So they did have a big Navy installation there at the time.
I just asked because one of the fellows that talked about it said he was a frogman. Now it's scuba or something else. You know, they keep improving ways you can stay longer underwater and all that good stuff. Now, when were you assigned to a ship, or when did you report aboard and begin your real career?
I left the sonar school and was sent by mistake to amphibious school. I'd asked for it when I saw it on the list of places you could go, and I got up there and they said, we don't train sonarmen to drive landing craft. So they said, we're going to put you on this APD. It was like a destroyer escort, and it carried underwater demolition team people around.
Okay.
And I just got aboard, and they said they were going out of commission. So I went. This was at Little Creek. And
that's Virginia, isn't it?
Little Creek, Virginia. Yeah, that's near Norfolk. And so I think I was aboard maybe 2 weeks, and the ship left and went to Charleston, and they put it out of commission. So they sent me up to Norfolk.
You were the Albatross. Okay, then what?
Then I got on the Allen M. Sumner. It was a destroyer, 692, and made some cruises down to the Caribbean, Kingston, Jamaica, and places like that.
Were they shakedown cruises or regular
no,
patrol
they were
duty?
just regular exercises. We were
Okay,
going on exercise all the time, and a couple to the North Atlantic that were really rough. In fact, lost a good friend up there over the side.
Ooh,
yeah.
washed over?
Got washed over the side while we were refueling. Destroyers are not too stable, so when they get low on fuel, they really do some
like a cork.
dancing around. So he went over the side, and the lifeguard destroyer behind us, the USS Fox, picked him up, and but he died 2 hours later. So.
Like thermia or something like that, exposure?
Yeah.
Now, how far, did you never got all the way across the Atlantic, did you?
No, I never got to Europe my whole career.
Oh, close, but they wouldn't let you aboard.
Wouldn't let me in.
Okay. Then what?
Then we were in Norfolk one day, and the yeoman that was on board said, you know, there's a ship up in Newport that's, they're looking for a third-class sonarman. And he says, would you want to go up there? And there was 4 of us aboard. There's 4 third-class sonarmen on this Sumner. I said, yeah, give it to me before anybody else sees it, you know, so I'd be close to home in New Haven.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I went up there, and I got up there on Friday night to Newport. The ship was tied out of a buoy. I took a boat out there, and while the quarterdeck watch was checking me in, he says, boy, you're here just in time. I says, just in time for what? He says, well, we're leaving Monday morning.
Goodbye home.
He says, well, our new home port is going to be San Diego.
Oh.
So I asked the officer of the deck that was there for a Liberty card so I could go home for Saturday and Sunday. And he wouldn't give me one. No, he said he wanted me to stay aboard and learn where everything was. I said, I came from a ship just like it. And he turned around and walked away. So on Monday morning we left and went down the East Coast. And we got down around, I think it was around the Carolinas, when the captain came on the PA system, which is unusual, very unusual, to hear the captain on the PA. And he said, this is the captain speaking. We just got word from Washington that the North Korean Army has marched into South Korea.
Oh, welcome aboard.
And we're awaiting further orders. And about an hour later, he said, we'll be going through the Panama Canal and going directly to Pearl Harbor. And then we're going to pick up the 1st Marine Division on amphibious ships north of the Hawaiian Islands. And that's what we did. We refueled in Panama and went full speed to Pearl Harbor, refueled again, went north and picked up the 1st Marine Division and took them to Busan, which was the only part of South Korea that was left by the time we got there. Mm-hmm. The North Koreans had occupied everything except for the perimeter around Busan. So after that, we were attached to carrier task forces, and we remained with them until, let's see, that was in June of 1951 when the war broke out, I think. Was that 50?
I don't know. I don't give you a guess. Okay. But anyway.
Anyway.
You were there.
Yeah, the following March we returned to the States. And we put a lot of miles on the ship, but we didn't see too much action. We were at the invasion of Incheon, and we got around to the Wonsan side a little bit and down to Busan. And we finally got released and came back to the States, and we went into the South San Francisco shipyard. And I have this picture here to show you.
Okay. I'll hold it, and you can talk about it.
Okay. This picture shows where the sonar control room was. This door right here was where the sonar control room was, and they moved sonar down underneath this gun mount here. 2 decks. Let's see, it was on number 3 deck. This is the main deck, and then there was number 2 deck, and where the crew's mess was, and then under that was a berthing space, and they had put a soundproof wall around one corner of it and put the sonar control room in there. But this is a pretty good picture of the small. These are 5-inch guns.
Yeah.
There's 2, 4, 6 5-inch guns. The torpedo tubes are here. And there's some 40mm anti-aircraft guns, one on either side of the bridge, and a big one back aft. Was a big 4-gun mount there.
Okay.
So that was how the ship looked.
Okay. We have a change in the anatomy of the ship.
The change in the anatomy.
Okay.
Right. We went back to Korea the second time, and we were attached to. Originally, we were attached to Task Force 77, which was aircraft carriers, and now this time we're in Task Force 95, which was battleships, cruisers, and destroyers that were trying to keep that railroad incapacitated that runs down the east coast of Korea. So we were over on the east coast of Korea, and we weren't over there very long. We were about 3 weeks, I think. And we went into the harbor at Hongdam, and there were minesweepers. Our minesweepers were in there sweeping mines in the harbor. And the railroad tracks went in a tunnel up on the north side of the harbor. And they would roll, the North Korean Army had a cannon up there, and they'd roll the thing out, some artillery, and take a shot at the minesweepers every once in a while. So we went in there and discouraged them from doing that, because the guns we had were much bigger than theirs. And while we were in there, we struck a mine.
And here.
And
there it is.
Yeah, this is kind of wrong. There's, it should say 9 die.
Okay, yeah, I saw that correction down
Yes,
here.
right.
Now, that
Yeah.
was one of the old World War II mines, though, wasn't
Yeah,
it? That had been offloaded, and the Koreans then used them against you.
Yeah, the North Koreans relayed these mines that were swept
Okay.
up by us after the war, after World War II.
So recycling
They
wasn't the
recycled
best
them.
thing to do at that point in time. Would you want to
Right.
give us a this is interesting, folks, and I hope you can see them, but this is what the boat or the ship looked like before. And can you give us a little walkthrough here, Bob?
Like it says here, I was standing up here when the mine exploded, and it took place down here. Later on, this dotted line shows where the ship broke apart. This was several days later. We had, after we struck the mine, let's see, you had a burial at sea here.
I would want to show that, or do you want to show this one first to show what you call?
Well, the burial took place before the bow broke off.
Okay, then we'll get that. I have that here. This is one of the sadder parts, if you will, of the show.
Yes, of the 9 men that were killed, 8 were very good friends.
There we are.
All the sonarmen were killed, and these 2 fellows that were buried in here were up in the mess deck, the crew's mess, when the mine exploded, and they were in the damage control party up there. They have a damage control party forward, midships, and aft when we're at general quarters, and we were at general quarters when this happened.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, all the sonarmen were down in the new sonar room, which was down below the mess deck. And after the explosion, I went into the Combat Information Center up on the bridge and asked them if they had heard anything from sonar, and they said no. So I went down there, and when I stepped into the mess deck, there was no lights or ventilation on or anything because we'd lost all the power. I could see the deck in the mess deck was up against the overhead. It had flowered up right against the overhead. And the whole place was full of mess tables and chairs, and laundry from the berthing space down below was draped over everything. And everything was soaked with water and oil. And I could see daylight on the overhead of the mess deck. So I couldn't see where the hole was, but I could see that coming up. Then 4 days later, this happened.
Yeah. Oh, this is this guy right here. Yeah.
Of course, the people that slept up forward here now had no clothes except what they had on. And there was no place to eat for the crew anymore. So they were handing out trays of food to the crew on the main deck where the galley was. And you'd have to find a place somewhere on the ship to eat.
Yeah.
And the whole bow just crumpled away.
Yeah, that's this one right here.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah, this.
I don't know if you can see it or not.
This is where the bow started coming off. And then as it got progressively worse, you can see the gun barrels up here of the number 1 Mount 51.
Get back on camera.
Over here. And this is when the bow drifted away. It made some awful noises before it left because the bow was crashing into the ship. Until
it didn't sever completely, or just a...
Yeah, it was on the main deck was the only thing holding it on there.
Oh,
so they backed down a little bit and pulled it off. And this is what it looked like.
There's the part of the after picture, if you will.
We had a fleet tugboat with us, the Hitchiti, and the Hitchiti towed us backwards into Japan. And here we are tied up to the pier the next day because during the night a typhoon came through and it was kind of slamming us against the pier. That's why they used all these cables to hold us to the pier. So that was an exciting night too.
Now, this is a, make sure I get it right. Okay, this is another view of what
Yeah, this
damage.
was after we got in the dry dock.
And this is one of the chiefs down there, as small as he is.
Yeah, I don't know
looking
whether you can see him or not. There's a chief petty officer down here. He's looking at 5-inch shells from the magazine down there that were bent like bananas. And that kind of left us all kind of leery about handling them.
Got your attention.
So we carried them all out of there eventually and put them on the dry dock. Incidentally, this dry dock is the one where they built the largest battleship in the world. The
Yamamoto?
Yamato.
Yamato.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's a...
Yeah, this picture came from Life magazine. It said we were going backwards under our own power to Japan, but the tugboat had chitties off here somewhere towing us. We couldn't go anywhere because every time we started backwards, we started going in a circle to the left.
Okay, so no steering control.
We must have been some way the hull plating down here where the explosion took place was acting like a big rudder, and we couldn't do much with the ship either way.
And here's the best one.
Then they made some emergency repairs there, and this is the new emergency bow they stuck on us. It took them a couple of weeks to build that thing. It's just a 90-degree angle that got us back to the United States.
Okay.
We came back to the
You cut down your head speed.
Long Beach in California.
Well, that's great.
So
now, while you were, I guess it's in Busan in the harbor, were there any North Korean planes coming down like the kamikazes in Okinawa?
We didn't see any
You didn't
aircraft.
have that kind of problem?
no, we saw our own jets going up there, but they never got down to, they made sure they never got down to where we were.
Now, were you ever engaged in the evacuation, bringing back some of the guys who forced their way back?
They came through Hungnam, but that was before I think we got there. This is what was in the local paper. It says a young West Havener, Robert vonAllmen, is serving aboard the Ernest J. Small. And it says 8 died, 19 hurt. Actually, it was 9 died, and there was about 24 hurt as the warship hits the mine. So,
what's the date on that?
Yeah, this is Tuesday, October 9th. It happened on the 7th, but we were on the other side of the date line. So they lost a day there, and then there's a day getting it into print. And we also got a list of baseball players here on the World Series.
It had to work.
Joe DiMaggio and Phil Rizzuto.
Okay. Now, I'm kind of jumping around here, but I'm trying to introduce something that hasn't happened to me before. If you will, and I'll do it this way so we can make it a little interesting.
Yeah.
There's the surviving members of the sonar group.
Well, yeah, these people were all in the operations department. There was actually there was no sonarman left.
Oh, okay.
So
That's you.
That's
there,
me right there.
Yeah. Young, good-looking guy.
I was 20 years old. And then.
That's a reunion. Yeah,
that's a reunion many years later. But this is when I left the Navy. I was lieutenant junior grade, and.
Okay, but you're jumping the gun on me.
Oh, yeah, okay.
There's when he made chief, and then super chief, right?
That's when I made chief in 1956, I think that was, 55. So,
and that's when you left, if you will, the above-water Navy.
Yeah, right after that, yeah.
That's and then, tell us how you got your application for a commission that you told me before. That was great.
I was on the submarine at the time. I have a picture of that.
Oh yeah, let's turn that about. We can show that. Okay, this is the other part of you.
Yeah, this was years later. I was a senior chief petty officer on this weird-looking submarine that was really an underwater aircraft carrier. It carried 2 Regulus missiles in each one of these 70-foot-long hangars. And they were kind of a stopgap measure, the Regulus submarines. There was only 2 that looked like that. And there was 2 from World War II that were converted to hold 2 apiece. They each had 2 missiles. And then there was one that was nuclear powered, the USS Halibut. And we had a launcher that we would move back and forth from one hangar to the other here, and they'd open the door, put up bridging tracks. It was all done hydraulically, and push it onto they pull it out of the hangar and put it on the launcher, and then turn the launcher so that it would launch sideways off the submarine. And this is the only one that survives. This submarine is down at the Intrepid Sea, Air and Space Museum in New York City today. But I was some interesting duty on there. I was coming back off a patrol, and the captain came in the chief's quarters and asked any of us if we would be interested in becoming an officer. And so 4 of us said, yeah, we'd like to give it a try. So when we got back, as soon as we got back, they transferred me. That was the 4th patrol I made on there. These patrols are 3 months long. It's really arduous because diesel electric submarines, they use the showers to store potatoes. So there was no showers.
Oh. Spuds or suds, huh?
3 months, no showers.
Little ripe.
Right. It was tough going, and there was no laundry. So you brought a suit of clothes for every week you were going to be at sea.
And deep six them when you got through with them?
No, we took them over to submarine-based laundry, which was outdoors in Pearl Harbor. They didn't want those clothes in the inside. So yeah, diesel electric submarine duty was pretty rugged. Today, the nuclear submarines have a laundry and everything else.
Television. All that.
Yeah.
Now, tell us about the story you were telling me about the fire you had on the deck, and how you were notified. That's an interesting little bit.
Well, we were making practice launches off of Hawaii, and the game plan was we would surface and get a missile out on the launcher, and then 3 chase planes would come up overhead and practice testing to see if they could control the missile. And they could destruct it too. We could too.
A remote control?
Yeah, if it went haywire, we could blow it up.
Yeah.
We could blow it up. It was guided by a special radar. It was called Trounce. Not only did the radar tell you where the missile was, you could send guidance commands to it to make it go left or right or up or down. Yeah. So we had a little airport on Maui, Bonham Field it was called, and the practice missiles had landing gear. So we would land them over there. It saved a lot of money if you could
reuse them.
You reuse them, yeah. They were pretty elaborate. They're like a pilotless bomber. And we had one on the launcher one time, and the first 2 planes flew over and said they had control of it, and seemed to be okay. And the 3rd plane come over, he says, you know, Growler, you're on fire.
What happened?
What happened was when the missile was on the launcher, this thing held about 800 gallons of gasoline, and the connection between the fuel hose and the missile was supposed to blow off when you launched the missile, which was launched by rockets. There was 1 rocket on either side of the fuselage. And what happened was that connection was not tight. It was not put on tight.
A slow leak or something?
And there was gasoline leaking down into the superstructure and throughout the back of the submarine there. And some of it got in the exhaust of the jet engine and caught fire. And so now the whole submarine was on fire from the launcher aft. Of course, not much up there can burn, but there's a lot of telephone cables and stuff like that that are out there. So we went up. The submarine went down. The captain took it down about 10 feet.
Washed it off.
And washed all the flaming gasoline out from underneath it. And we went up with fire extinguishers. There was no fire left on the submarine, but the whole Pacific Ocean was on fire.
Dogtail all the way?
Way down. Yeah, probably a couple miles back. It was all stream of fire. Another time we had gone into the shipyard in Pearl Harbor, and they had made some pretty elaborate changes to the submarine. They moved the sail 10 feet higher because the hangars tended to broach in heavy weather. They would break the surface, and when we were snorkeling, we used a snorkel at night, and we went deep during the daytime when we were out to where we were doing our patrol.
Oh, these on the diesel ships?
Yeah, these are diesels. The nuclear submarines have a snorkel too. They have a small diesel, small battery and whatnot for emergency use. But this was the only way we could get around. We had 500 tons of batteries, lead acid storage batteries. But with all this modification in the yard, somebody got to put a weld in a valve that was taking seawater in from outside to cool a generator, and it blew off. And the next thing you know, we had an explosion up front. It sounded like an explosion. And then water pouring in, a lot of water. So that gave us all a little heartburn until we got the hull valve shut off. They always have a backup. It was a backup valve that blew off. And so they shut the 4-inch valve. It's a lot of square inches when you're down 350 feet. Mm-hmm. And it was quite high pressure water coming in. So we got that stopped and crawled back to the surface. We'd taken on 7 tons of water in just 30 seconds.
To lose your trim.
So, lost the trim, yeah. We finally struggled back to the surface, and we got the thing going back into Pearl Harbor, and that was the end of the missile shoot for that day.
Now, what was the problem? Because the Bob planes were oversized, or they weren't used to feeling them, or what?
No, what it was, the boat was not very streamlined, as you can see.
Oh, yeah.
And it was hard to get any speed up on this thing. It would do maybe 18 knots. That was the maximum speed on the surface. Yeah, on the surface. Submerged, you could do about 15 knots for 30 minutes. That was it.
And then the batteries drain out?
Batteries are drained.
Yeah, back up.
So.
Now, you were telling me, and this is just another aside, but when you guys started taking on that rush of water, there were 3 or 4 guys scrambled like mad to dog down the
oh, yeah.
hatches.
Yeah, when we first heard anything like that, why, the nearest one to the watertight door, he slams it shut, because they're all left open all the time under normal circumstances. But I grabbed one side of the door, and this big cook we had, he grabbed the other side of the door. He was on the other side. And he almost threw me into the ceiling when he into the overhead when he shut that door. He slammed it shut and spun the wheel on it and dogged it down tight. And then I could hear the officer in charge there. He was saying, "Emergency surface, emergency surface." So the sonar was in the control room, so I could see what everybody was doing. And the chief of the watch was over there. He was shutting all the vents on the tanks, and they
did blow all. The
auxiliaryman, he blows tanks, and he had 3,000-pound air going into those tanks in a few minutes.
Pop right up?
No, we just struggled.
Oh,
we were really struggling
because of the
to make
improvements they had put onto the yard.
Well, because all the water we were taking on, we was taking on 7 tons of water and they finally got that shut off up front, and then we came up at a fairly good rate. But it was touch and go there for a while whether it was going to come back to the surface. So.
Now, how were your last days on the submarine bit, if you will? Any special memories? Like, a few people hadn't noticed, he has 1 or 2 patches doing with submarines. Do you ever keep in touch with the guys? See them every once in a while?
I've seen some of the, in fact, I was down, they hold the Growler reunions on the Growler down in New York City every other year.
Do you ever give you the keys to the city for being down
there?
No, I'm just asking, you never know.
There's just, there's so few submariners in the Navy. I think during World War II, there was less than 1%, 1.5% of the Navy was submariners. And even in peacetime, they didn't have that many until I went to nuclear power and they started really training a lot of people.
Polaris type guys.
Yeah, the ones with the reactor-driven submarines. Some of them were attack submarines and some of them were missile launchers, but they weren't cruise missiles like we had with wings. They were ballistic missiles.
Yes.
Straight
16
out.
tubes up and down?
Yeah, 16. They had 16 tubes, and that's.
Well, that was the mainstay, if you will, a plug for the old hometown. GE Ordnance here was very, very deep in the design, development, and supplying of a lot of that stuff.
That's right.
And we did a pretty good job.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah,
okay.
I think so.
Now, when did you finally retire from that into the Navy, if you will, before you went aboard? Okay.
Yeah, I went to the sonar research ship after.
Okay, that's when you were then commissioned.
And then I was on there, I think, 2 years, and it was 1965. And then I was sent down to the sonar school in Key West to teach this new sonar that they were testing on this USS Wilkinson. Is the ship I was on. I was a sonar officer on there. God, we had 26 sonarmen on there. Normally a destroyer carries 6.
Wow.
So
overstaffed.
well, the sonar would fill this room. It was just enormous.
I know.
So I went to the sonar school to teach officers how this thing worked. And I retired from that job in 1967. November 1st, 1967, I left the Navy. And I came up here to Pittsfield to work on the books for the Poseidon ballistic missile system. I was here 4 years, and the program was just about over. And I took a leave and went home, and the phone rang about 2 weeks later. It was General Electric in Erie, Pennsylvania. They asked me to come out there and take a job running a training program for the New Haven Railroad employees, because the Erie was building new commuter cars for the New Haven Railroad. They were building 144 cars for them in a brand new plant. So I went out there and stayed there about 4 months and watched them build a car and wrote a lot of training manuals on the different systems that were on the car, compressed air system, electrical system. And the New Haven has a very special problem in that the trains run on alternating current until they get down to New York City, and then they shift over to direct current. And
what is it, the grid system they have as far as power, the internal generation of power from the engines?
This is each pair of cars had one of them had a pantograph up on the roof that could reach the wire, and that was picking up 25 cycle 11,000 volt AC power for both cars. And then when it got down to Woodlawn, New York, which is at the top of the Bronx, we went on to the old New York Central tracks. The New Haven Railroad had to use the New York Centrals tracks for the last 12 miles into Grand Central Terminal. So that was third rail, 650 volt DC. It was a direct current, like the subway system.
Mm-hmm.
So the cars had to do a lot of mechanical, electrical shifting around
yeah.
at that one point, going back and forth across this gap there. So I taught that when I first started down there. Before I taught the first class, I told them, they were mostly supervisors in that first class. I says, I know you think I just came from Erie and to teach this to you about this car, but I says, you know, I'm from New Haven originally. And everybody was taken aback a little bit. And I said, my father worked for the New Haven. He was an electrician. And I said, my grandfather was also an employee of the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad. And he worked there back when they had pinch gas instead of electric lighting in the cars. So he ran the pinch gas shop in New Haven.
Was that like a butane system?
Yeah, like
Coleman Lanton
propane.
sort of thing?
Yeah, right.
Really?
Yeah.
It
was called pinch gas, P-I-N-S-C-H, I think it was called, pinch gas. But my grandfather ran the plant there that made that.
So you had a family history already.
Yeah, I had three.
Okay.
I was the fourth generation, or third generation.
Now, talking about generations, where along the line in all this wandering and going and coming, did you ever get married, or are you married, still married? And do you have any kids?
I was married in 1950 when I got back from Korea, in between the two trips to Korea. I was married, and we had 3 children. All girls, and then we got divorced later when I left Pittsfield, and I remarried 15 years later. Let's see, it was, I think I had just finished up with the railroad, and I was over to Friendly, met one of the waitresses over there, and we got married. We've been married ever since. That's
real friendly, huh?
20, yeah.
Now, did she travel with you when you made all these hopscotches around, or did you just commute out back and forth? How'd you handle that married life?
Well, the second trip that I made to California, she was with me in the plane when we were coming back, and we lost the engine.
We're going now into phase 3. Some of the other things that Bob did. Bring us back up to date, if will, you and your airplanes and your mishaps.
Oh, let's see. I got pictures here of the.
Okay, we got some time. Wherever you got them, this is your show.
This is. Let's see.
You got there?
Yeah, this is one. The first trip I went to California.
I'll get this out of your way.
My, oh, did I mention that? Was marijuana bust?
No, well, you can start that, if you will. There's all kinds of avenues this kid went on. I'll clue you. All right, go ahead.
The first trip I made to California was when my grandson died out there. He drowned in a swimming pool in the backyard. For heaven's sake, if you got little children, tie them down if you got one of those pools, because
and keep an eye on him.
Everybody was keeping an eye on him, and one by one they all came in the house and they forgot he was out there, and I was the only male there I had. So, but while I was out there, the sheriff of Glynn County, my son-in-law was a policeman, and the sheriff of Glynn County asked me if I would fly marijuana search mission, which I did. And he ended up giving me all these patches because we found, this is the airplane.
Yeah, I'll hold him up here. I think
that's my son-in-law. He was a dentist.
Oh, okay.
And the other one was a policeman in Willows, California. And we made the largest marijuana bust in the United States. There was 70,000 plants. This patch here.
Maybe they can hold it there. Okay. Now we got you. We get them. All 3 patches for your dope bust, huh?
Yeah, one's from the sheriff of the county.
Okay, that's
one's
this
from
guy.
the city. This is from the city of Willows,
Okay.
the town of Willows. And the other one was, my daughter made that up for the sheriff. He wanted to patch it.
Yeah, great. Tell them about how you spotted that. That's the interesting part.
Well, there was an airport next to, oh, not next to, but probably a mile away from this, maybe 2 miles away from this farm where they suspected they were growing marijuana. So they put a deputy in a plane with me with a police radio, a handheld radio, and we flew down from Willows, and I forget the name. I think it was Copake or something like that. It was. No, it was. I forget the name of the town where it was, but I flew very low over that airport as though I had just taken off, and flew over the farm they suspected had marijuana in it.
Spy in the sky, huh?
Spy in the sky, and it turned out it was a windy day. And they had been over there before, and they couldn't see any marijuana growing there. But it was so windy the day we were up that it had blown the corn they had planted all around it.
As a buffer.
Yeah, they had about 10 rows of corn planted around the outside. And the fellow that was with me, the deputy, he spotted the marijuana. And
was he excited? You said when he was turning back, "Hey, we found him! We found him! We got him!"
Then we chased a couple of kids that were cultivating it. They were out there watering this stuff or something, and they ran out of the field, and we put the police cars on them because I was flying around the ranch, and I flew up. There was a farm across the road from this one, and I flew up his driveway. And he called the police and said some nut was flying up his driveway.
Did you touch and go, or did
no,
you land, or just buzz low?
I was trying to keep track of the 2 guys. There was 2 guys in the house, in the ranch house that was there. And one was for a while up looking through binoculars at the plane. And I was afraid he was going to take a shot at me. And I flew up this guy's driveway across the way. Trying to stay away from him, and he called the police. There was a police car there, and he called over to the cop and said, "Hey, did you see that? And that just flew up my driveway." But there they are, loading this tons and tons of marijuana. They said here in the paper is 60,000 plants, but there's actually 70,000. And later, I landed the plane at that nearby airport, and a police car picked us up and brought us over to they had everybody in custody. And we walked into the middle of the field, and I says, where's the marijuana? There's nothing here but weeds and corn. The guy says, well, that's what the weed is. It's marijuana. I didn't even know what it looked like.
That kind of stuff, huh?
I didn't even know what it looked like. It was funny because they all started laughing. All the cops started laughing. He made the biggest marijuana bust in the United States, and he said, you don't even know what it looks like. I said, if it wasn't for Roger sitting next to me, I said, he was deputy.
You were there though, and you did make a good contact, if you will.
Yeah, it was an interesting trip.
Now, you're segueing into another time when you were taking an airplane ride, as I call it, and you lost an engine?
Yes, yeah. Later on, after I married my present wife, we went out to California to visit my kids. And I came all the way back to, we were just south of Albany in Richmondville. And I was up above some clouds at 9,200 feet. And the engine started going from tick, tick, tick to bang, 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 and the smoke in the cockpit, and I had to shut off the engine. And
A dead stick?
it was just about dead stick. It was still, the propeller was still turning, but
it wasn't doing any good.
It wasn't doing much for us. And I circled down through a hole in the clouds and came out above Richmondville. New York Route 10. Route 88, the interstate, was loaded with traffic, and I didn't want to try and land there, so I put it on Route 10. It was, I had to go under some wires. I had to glide down under some wires, and there were no phone poles around.
Thank goodness.
So
keep the wings on.
Keep the wings on, yeah. Well, because I still had 50 gallons of gas in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to avoid spilling it.
You've got some, one of these envelopes, you had some pictures of you trying to go toll-free down the highway.
Yeah, there's...
Just a couple, just give people an idea what it was all about, okay? These are a little small, but this big Bob.
There you go, airplane lands on Route 10.
Okay. He has a habit of getting his name in the news, not in the most
Not the
obvious
way you
ways.
want it.
But, as you can see here, it did cause a bit of a traffic jam. Nobody dared get near him. They figured he was something from outer space, I guess. But the best part about it is you landed it and you were able to walk away from it with nothing happening. That
Almost
takes some
nothing.
doing.
Well, those are all New York State policemen.
Yeah, the finest. Well, as you can see, we have all kinds of good stuff here. Now, before we end up, and we got about 3 or 4 more minutes, after all this stuff, I know now that you're in the VFW over there in Richmond. Is that right?
I'm in the VFW in Pittsfield.
Oh, okay.
And I'm also past commander of the submarine veterans in Hudson Valley Base, which is in New Paltz.
Uh-huh. And also you're on the honor guard.
I'm on the honor guard here in the VFW and attend all the funerals that families request. And something I'd like to mention too.
Do it.
That if you're aware of a veteran who has died, and we don't care whether he's a member of the VFW or not. If you want the honor guard there, you tell your funeral home that you want the honor guard to be there, and we will be there. That's what it boils down to.
Mm-hmm. Good deal.
So,
now, as a kind of a wrap-up, obviously you've had a real good life with and without the Navy helping you, but what's your reaction? Was the service life something that was positive or negative in the way you've been able to live your life?
The best thing about the service is everybody operates as a team. There's very few things you do in the Navy that don't involve other people. Like when I went into instructor duty, I had an oceanographer, another officer that was helping me out teaching this sonar equipment, and between the two of us, we just put together a training course where they could understand what we were talking about. We had prospective commanding officers and executive officers that were far outranked us coming to this school.
But you were the boss.
He was a lieutenant, and I
Okay.
was a JG. But that didn't enter into it at all.
You were there doing your thing.
We were doing our thing, yeah. And it was the same with everything in this service, in the Navy. If you went to general quarters, well, what's the sense in having 2 guys up in a gun mount that requires 5? So all 5 have to work together to get this job done. And if you learn anything in the service, it is the teamwork is what counts.
Yeah.
So it was very instructive.
Any words of wisdom you'd like to pass on to the people now and to the young guys coming along with respect to how they may or may not enjoy the service?
I would say the only mistake I probably ever made was I was having too much fun. The only school I ever graduated from was grammar school.
Yeah. You did a good job, though. You fooled a lot of people for many years.
Well, I don't recommend it.
Okay.
It's really slows you down in life. But it was an interesting career.
Now, in
Really
all of
was.
this career time, did you ever take advantage of the GI Bill or anything like that to start up a new hobby, a new business, or more schooling?
No,
No?
never did that.
Just laying out there, huh?
It's, I walked right out of the Navy into this job up here with General Electric, and I suppose I could have gone to night school, but even then that would have been hard because we were working 60-hour weeks over there for a long time. So, but it was an interesting job. That's what I liked about working is
It keeps you occupied.
Some of the jobs were so interesting that, and especially the Navy was.
Okay. Well, it's, as the man says, it's that time to say hello, goodbye, and what have you. And all I can say is, Robert,
Okay,
I
Robert.
thank you. It's been a great trip, and you've done a lot to make life happy.
I've done a lot of different things, yes.
But they all helped along the line.
Yep.
Okay. Now, with that, again, we invite any and all of you guys and gals, if you have a story about your Navy, Army, Marine Corps experience, and you want to share it, please come. We're here at the studio anytime you want us, and we'll give you the best opportunity to share what you did. Thank you for your time. Peace. We'll see you soon. Goodbye.